Hello, and welcome back to my channel. I am doing Super Mario World and Storytime. I actually did a couple hours of recordings earlier when my kids were at visitation, but I forgot how to jump. Oh, I forgot how to jump. But you couldn't hear me over the game volume. So I just spent like the last half hour recording test clips and stuff to make sure that you can actually hear me, and you can. So I should be good now to do this video. So hello, how are you? That's why you'll notice that I did get the pink exclamation point thing, whatever you call it, because I did that when I was recording earlier, and thankfully I did not save beyond that, so you guys didn't miss too much, but there's nothing I could do about that particular save spot. So anyway, hi, how's everyone doing? Hope you're all doing well. I got I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it on the video, but I got a new tattoo today. So yeah, that was fun. So anyway, I'm gonna get right into my story time so that it doesn't take too long. So today's story time that I'm going to be talking to you about is something that happened in, I want to say late winter or very early spring of, I think it was 2018, if I'm not mistaken. It may have been 2019, but I'm pretty sure that it was 2018. So I woke up it must have been like a weekend, a Saturday or something, possibly a Sunday, and I woke up, whatever time in the morning, kind of early, like maybe, 7 or 8, not super early or anything, but I woke up to the sound of my husband, like banging on something down in the basement. Like, basically it sounded like he was like banging on something with like a wrench or metal pipe or something. So I go downstairs and I'm like, hey, what's going on? What are you doing? And he told me that the water heater / furnace that we have was broken. So, of course I'm like, oh, that's terrible. Obviously you gotta fix it. And he had called our neighbor over to come and help. And our neighbor came over and, he's like helping my husband with whatever he's doing. He had to like order a part, or maybe he had to go to like the hardware store and get a part, something like that. And he assured me he was going to be able to fix it and whatever. And then my neighbor pulled me aside and he told me that my husband had started like calling him or messaging him or whatever at like 3 o'clock in the morning, telling him that there were people like after him, like people like not after him, people trying to break into our shed, and there was nobody there, obviously. And so he was concerned. He told me he thought he was on drugs, and I was like, no, he's not on drugs. Like, what is wrong with you? And I was kind of mad about him even suggesting that, and so I just kind of blew it off and let him keep fixing whatever was broken in the house, or in. Oh my gosh, sorry, I'm really bad at story times. Anyway, so my husband goes and gets this new part and replaces it. Well, meanwhile, he kind of seemed to like realize that maybe the heater was never broken, because like the heat never turned off, the heat was fine, like nothing happened like with that. And then like all the numbers that he thought meant that it was broken were exactly the same. So then he kind of started to like, I guess, second guess himself, like, oh, maybe it wasn't broken. And I guess, I don't know, he kind of made it seem like maybe he was just like tired, like, he had gotten overtired or whatever. So I assumed that was the case. He was just really tired. He had just recently started working a midnights job. And he was not really used to midnights, so being tired was not outside the realm of possibility. And so I just kind of let it go, didn't really make a big deal about it. But he ended up going out to his shed. He was always out in his shed. That's just where he spent a lot of time. And he came inside at one point, or no, he called the kids and I out to the yard, and he told us that there was snowy owls up in the tree. So we go out there and we're looking, and we didn't really see anything, but we were just kind of like, okay, you know, maybe there are snowy owls and we're just not seeing them or whatever. And at the time he was like early 50s, maybe he was 51 already, I'm not really sure. And his eyesight wasn't always the greatest, so, you know, whatever. We didn't really think too much of it. But then he started like texting me and like calling me from the shed and telling me that there were owls outside, that the owl was trying to attack him. And then I started to get a little bit concerned. And he had came inside at some point, and he called me upstairs, and he told me he had to have a serious talk with me. And I'm like, okay, what is your serious talk? And he told me that he could feel the vibrating on the bed, and he wanted to know what was going on with that. And I was like, what are you talking about, the vibrating on the bed? And he's like, I can feel it, the vibrating. And I'm like, he's like, put your hand on the bed. So I put my hand on the bed and I didn't feel anything. And I'm like, I don't feel any vibrating. And he's like, no, I know what's going on. I feel the vibrating. Well, I wasn't really sure what the heck he was talking about, but I was just kind of like, listen, there's no vibrating. You're losing it, buddy. And that was about it. Well, I went to my sister's for a little bit, and I was talking to her about it, and I started to question if maybe it was drugs. And so I asked her about her ex, who had been like really into cocaine, because the person who had told me that not my neighbor, not when my neighbor told me he thought my husband was on drugs. He told me the drug that it actually turns out that it was. But a friend of mine had told me that they had heard rumors about him doing drugs at work, and they had heard that it was cocaine. So that's where my mind went. The other drug, no. I completely blew off the even idea of that drug. I already did that part. Whoopsie. Well, that's how I got to the pink exclamation point, just so you know now. But anyway, so I was talking to my sister about it, and she told me that when her ex did coke, he didn't have any kind of like, nothing like that had happened, like the hallucinations. So I was like, okay, maybe it's like a medical issue. Like maybe there's something actually wrong with him, like his blood sugar or, you know, whatever. Because I had a friend who was diabetic, and he would sometimes like kind of like go a little bit loopy when his blood sugar got really bad. So I thought, okay, maybe that's the problem. So I go home and I decide to make him dinner because he hadn't slept in a while because, midnight supposedly was, screwing up his sleep schedule. So he hadn't really slept and he hadn't really eaten. And of course, me being completely naive, I didn't go to drugs. Like, briefly, like I said, I asked my sister about the possibility of maybe cocaine, but I didn't really think anything beyond that. And once she told me that wasn't it, I was like, nope, it's definitely not drugs, it's something else. It's some sort of medical issue. And of course it was not. But I'll get to that. So I go home and I'm making dinner, and he's back out in the shed, and he's telling me that there's owls attacking him. And I'm like, no, there's not. There are not owls attacking you. And, sorry. So I'm like trying to get him to come in the house, and he's insisting that there's these owls. And I open up the door, I open up the door like to try to get him to come inside. And he starts, like he opens up the shed and he starts talking to my neighbor. Like shouting his name, hey Jess. Nobody was there. My neighbor was not outside. He was literally talking to their little, they have like a, what do you call it? Like a knight statue? That's what he was talking to. My neighbor was not there. And I'm like, nobody is there. Who are you talking to? Like, there's no one there. And he's just shouting at nobody. And he finally comes in the house, and my daughter just kind of lost it. I screamed at him, Dad, there's nothing there. And that kind of like snapped him out of it. So then he's like, there's nothing there? There hasn't been anything there? And I'm like, no. So I make him dinner, and I tell him he needs to go to bed. Well, he goes down in the basement, and he tells me there's mice in the walls. He can hear mice running through the walls. And for a split second, I'm like, oh my God, mice, are you kidding me? And then he grabs this knife that he has sitting on his little table, and he stabs the wall. And that's when it clicked in my brain. There were not mice in the walls. The walls in our basement are like cement, and then they have like a foam board, like insulation over top of it. There's nowhere for mice to be running in my walls. Like there's not. They don't have an inside to them. There's nothing inside. It's all brick. Like any wires and stuff are outside. Like it's not a finished basement. And so that's when I was just like, okay, you need to go to bed. Well, at this point, I'm about ready to take him to the hospital because I'm thinking he's genuinely having like a medical issue. But he eats something, and he tells me that he just needed to eat. You know, he's fine. He's just tired, and then he kind of starts acting himself again. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe it really was his blood sugar. You know, I'm telling him maybe you should make a doctor's appointment. And you know, he's like, yeah, definitely. You know, whole deal. And he went to bed, and he slept for a very long time. And when he woke up, he was fine. And so I thought that maybe that was it. And it wasn't until like 2 years later that I discovered that that was the first time he had had a meth-induced like psychosis episode. And thank goodness that one was relatively benign because the next two were incredibly violent. But I cannot tell those until my divorce is final. But yeah, it was very scary for us, but it was scary because we thought there was something medically wrong. So once we discovered that he had been using meth that whole time, it became, I mean, still scary, but like scary in a different way, I guess. So yeah, anyway, that's that crazy story time. So I'm going to end this here. Sorry, it's been the same. Or no, it hasn't been the same level. I've done other levels. It feels like the same levels because I just recorded all this earlier. But anyway, thank you for listening. And please let me know what you think. My first storytime video that I did got like 9 views, but then nobody watched any of the others, and I'm assuming it's because I'm not real great at telling stories. I lose my train of thought and say and way too much and whatever, but I'm gonna do my best. So I wrote down what I did for all the other ones, so at least I know what I'm going to be saying this time since I already recorded it once. So we'll see. Anyway, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.